Hey guys, it's Joel from Hybrid Defensive. Thought I'd try something a little different tonight and go live. Talk a little bit about concealed carry belts, specifically for concealed carry. Um, some of my favorite belts, and kind of why belts are important and what you should look for in a belt when you're talking about concealed carry. So the obvious question is, why do we care about belts? Mostly because belts are good for more than just preventing plumber's crack. The idea behind a belt for a concealed carrier is, to me, the same thing as if a SWAT guy with his plate carrier, his chest rig, or just a standard police officer with his belt. It's your load carriage system. It's the only, other than pockets, it's the only way you have to actually carry your firearm and any accessories that you carry for your firearm. So whether it's flashlights, spare magazine, med kit, handcuffs, in the case of law enforcement officers, whatever it is. Um, Thanks, Frankie. Um, so that's that's how you're gonna carry it. So you gotta have a belt that's actually gonna be able to carry all that. It's not gonna sag down because it's pretty obvious to a lot of people that you're carrying a gun if you're constantly adjusting your belt, especially if you're constantly grabbing in the same spot to adjust your belt, because naturally you're going to grab where the belt is heaviest and you're going to shift it up, um, and your belt's going to be heaviest where your gun's at. So now you've got bulges, now you've got all sorts of other issues. So you want a belt that's not going to sag. And you're going to want a belt that's stable. When I say stable, you don't want a belt that's going to start to kind of go in and out. When it's going in and out, that allows possibly the butt of the gun to start coming outwards, and that can also cause printing and bulging and so on. The whole idea behind concealed carry is that, well, it's concealed and you're trying to maintain that edge, and not so much problem around here in Virginia, but in other places you're also trying to prevent the panic of the idea of, oh my God, there's a guy with a gun, even though the guy's perfectly licensed and whatever. But concealed is concealed. You want a belt that supports that, and you want a belt that carries all your stuff. So I've owned a lot of different belts over the years. My dad was from Colorado, so I grew up with the whole, like, gigantic belt buckle and really thick leather belts. That's just what I was used to, so it's probably why I still have a thing for leather belts. Nylon obviously is also very popular, and then there's some other ones that are out there. I will admit that back earlier in my military career, I may have done the very boot thing and worn my rigger's belt out with my combat boots and my jeans, but that was a long time ago. Let's not talk about that. Um, we're back to leather belts now. As I've gone through belts, a couple things I've noticed. We talked about being able to bear the weight and being stable, but you also want a belt that doesn't scream, "Hey, I'm carrying a weapon." So when I mentioned, doing the boot thing, wearing the Riggers belt, Riggers belts are awesome. I mean, they support all sorts of weight. That's what they're designed for. You hang from a helicopter in a Riggers belt. Don't recommend it, but it works. Um, so Riggers belts are great, except that, especially where I live here in Hampton Roads, I can spot your Riggers belt from across the room. And the second thing I look for after I see that Riggers belt is I look for the bulge. So I'm like, all right, guy's got a Riggers belt. He's, Tommy cool guy. So where's his gun? Possibly on him somewhere. Start looking for the bulge. Try to figure out if something I need to worry about. So Riggers belts scream gun, scream cool guy, scream 511, so on and so forth. Not that there's anything wrong with nylon. You just need a nylon belt that is a little bit more low key. My favorite nylon belt is going to be the Aries Gear Aegis belt. And the reason I like this belt, this is the regular Aegis. They also make an Aegis Enhanced, which is stiffer, helps a little bit with that stability and support of the firearm. The reason I like this is because even if I'm wearing this with a tucked in shirt, people are seeing what looks like, because you can get this in black, silver, and I believe they have gold as well, this looks like a kind of your stereotypical regular guy belt buckle. It's not the Cobra buckle. It's not the obvious, pass through and back of a rigger's belt. Even the little G hooks now, those aren't as bad, but if you know what you're looking for, you can spot the G hooks. So I love this. And the other thing I like about it, that I like, one of the reasons I like nylon belts, and especially this one, is it's just a slide friction fit. So on those days when you're open or when you're carrying outside the waistband, the belt's good. On those days when you're carrying inside the waistband, the belt's still good. All you got to do is adjust it a little bit. And for those days when you're feeling a little fatter than normal, like after the holidays, which we're coming off of, still good. I have not had any issues with the belt slipping. It's great. It's tight. Aries did a great job of designing this buckle. And if you want to be a cool guy, they do have engraving options and some other stuff. They'll do custom engraving for you. So you can have a low profile belt that, has Crusader stuff on it for low profile stuff. Like I said, this is the standard. They do have an enhanced, which is a little bit stiffer. These belts do run, they start at $115 unless you can catch them on Scratch and Dent, which I caught this one on Scratch and Dent and I got it for $75. And I can tell you right now that the failure of quality control on this, I had to look for it. They probably could have sold this belt as new and no one would have noticed, but they care that much about their product and their quality control is good enough that they literally caught a ding that was probably a millimeter on this buckle. So if you're going for nylon, I honestly believe this is probably one of the best bets you've got, both for the low profile nature and just the support. So, as I mentioned, I grew up with leather belts. So naturally, I enjoy a leather belt. Leather belt is very stable. It's very strong. The downside to leather belts is typically they have 5, maybe 7 holes, and you're stuck with fixed adjustments. When you're feeling a little chubby after Thanksgiving, those 5 adjustments can be a little rough, especially when you decide to go IWB. So I've never been a huge fan of leather belts for concealed carry, although I have used several. I've used the Bianchi. This is 1.75 inches. It's awesome. I loved it. This was my go-to belt buckle belt for a long time. I've also used for dressier belts. I've used some of Galco's offerings. Galco's are also very nice, made in the USA. And these are probably the dressiest leather belts I've seen. So wear this with a suit, so on and so forth. There's even, I have no idea who makes this. This was sold locally here at Colonial. I believe it's locally made. I know it says made in the US. This actually has 7 adjustments, which is unusual for a leather belt. 5 is your standard. But this has 7, so it gives you a little bit more options. It was actually designed for concealed carriers, and that's what Colonial sells it for. So, I love the Aegis. And, sorry, getting thirsty. Moonshine, love it. So, a company down in Jacksonville named Mean Gene Leather. Guy named Gene Higdon, I believe is his name, that runs that company, took the Aries belt buckle and combined it with a leather belt. And this thing is awesome. It is a little bit pricier than the Aries nylon belt, but for, I think, looks, and I think over time, probably performance as well, I love this belt. As you can see, that's a thick belt right there. It's about a 1/4 inch, more or less. The same roller buckle. And this one, honestly, is even more secure than the nylon one, just because it's a little bit thicker. It locks up a little tighter. It's got a nice nice knurling. Probably can't see it, but there's nice knurling in there that locks it up nice and tight. And really, I think this is my go-to. I've been wearing this probably for about 6 months. Zero issues with it. It's nice and thick, but it's not so thick that it interferes with the common IWB clips. I've used the Raven clip. I've used the G-code clip, and I've used just kind of your standard, over the belt clip that a lot of Kydex holsters have on them, and I have not had any issues. In fact, this actually almost perfectly fills that standard belt clip and locks it in nice and tight, and I've had no issues with that slipping at all. So if you're looking for a concealed carry belt, check out Mean Gene. Also check out Aries Gear, not to be confused with Aries Weapons Systems or whatever they're calling themselves now. Change their name. And I think you'll really enjoy it. So, review. Don't buy a Walmart belt. Just like everyone tells you, don't go out and buy an Uncle Mike's holster from Walmart for a concealed carry. Don't buy a Walmart belt for concealed carry either, because you might as well just pair them up together and you'll be doing great. So get a quality holster. Most people know that. In fact, I used to have a lot of students that would show up with a great holster, and then they'd attach it to whatever belt they had always worn, because prior to going out and getting their concealed carry, their holsters or their belt's sole function was to hold their pants up. And let's be honest, it doesn't take much of a belt to do that typically. It takes a lot more of a belt to hold up weapons, ammo, flashlight, everything else. Quality holster, quality belt. In addition to the quality of the belt, low profile belt if you can help it. If you do anything with your shirt tucked in, you need a low profile belt that doesn't scream, "Hey, I'm carrying." One other option I forgot to mention: First Spear does have a belt that is basically it's a nylon webbing in the center and biothane on the outside. I've used that. It's not a bad belt. I didn't feel it was quite as stable as either of the Aries Gear or the Mean Gene. And I had the Coyote one, and it was a weird shade of brown. It didn't really blend in that well with kind of the brown that you would be looking for in like a nice leather belt. So I ended up going away from that. But it's another option, and they have a black and they have a brown. So bunch of options. Get out there. Keep in mind that just like with buying a quality gun and buying a quality holster, you probably are going to spend some money on your belt, but it's worth it. Buy once, cry once. Get a good belt. It's going to work for you. It's going to support your gear and your ancillary equipment, and rock on. So, you guys got any questions? Doing pretty good. Yeah, I kind of agree that the adjustments were a little weird. I kind of had high hopes for it, but I think had it been a thicker belt, like a 1.75 maybe, in that thin material, maybe it'd be more supportive. And the adjustments, they probably should have just gone with standard belt size adjustments on that one. But I mean, not my product. I'm pretty happy with what I got now. So, all right, thanks for joining. Y'all have a great one, and hopefully talk to you later.